Welcome to the Actuaries in the Wild podcast. I started this podcast because I believe that actuaries are more than just your stereotypical number cruncher that sits at a computer all day. Many of us have endeavors that go beyond the traditional actuarial realm. My goal is to meet those actuaries that have ventured from their desks to explore their passions. It's time to meet the actuaries in the wild. Today's actuary in the wild is Bart Huby. Welcome, Bart.
Hello, Jeremy. Hi, nice to be on your program.
Thank you. I want to start by finding out a little bit more information about your background. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, including what made you decide to become an actuary and about your actuarial career.
Okay, so I guess my actuarial career has been pretty standard to date. I was always good at maths at school. An uncle of mine was an actuary. When I ended up doing maths at university, getting to the end of the maths course, the careers people said, here's an obvious career to go into, be an actuary. So it was sort of one I went into. I thought about it, but it seemed a good career to go into. And I did a diploma in statistics at university before I went, but that was sort of it. And then qualified as an actuary, went into, did defined benefit pension consulting as my career. I joined the current firm that works I'm a partner, Lane Clark and Peacock. We now call ourselves LCP. We're a UK partnership which works primarily in pensions and insurance, or at least did to until fairly recently. I joined the firm as a partner in '95, and been here ever since, working in Winchester, just to the southwest of London in the UK.
Okay. So when we talked earlier, you said that you're a massive football fan, and for those in the U.S., when we say football, we're referring to soccer. What got you started as a fan?
So, I mean, the area I lived in, Merseyside in the northwest of England, football is like the passion that everybody has there. So although my parents weren't actually interested in football, I just got into it with my brother from a very young age. The local team, Liverpool, obviously one of the most famous teams in the world, they won the FA Cup back in 1965. England won the World Cup in 1966, and I've been a football fan ever since. I have another team, Tranmere Rovers. Probably most people in America won't have heard of them. They're a fourth tier side in England, but trying to get up the pyramid. They were my really local team. Liverpool were across the Mersey. And then one other thing I think about football is quite interesting. I've been to every World Cup competition since 1990, so I've been to 9 different World Cups.
Okay, wow.
The world record I've heard is 10, so I'm just one behind that. Got to the final in Qatar in December. That's the first final I've been to. Great game. And obviously looking forward to, I've been to America in 1994 for the World Cup then, looking forward to the next one in 2026.
So you planning on coming to America then for the World Cup?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Mexico, but because I've already done America for a World Cup, but definitely Mexico, maybe the US as well. Yeah.
Okay. And who do you root for football?
Well, Liverpool and Tranmere Rovers, they're my 2 teams.
Okay.
So, and in fact, I'm wearing a Jurgen Klopp cap, which one of my friends gave me. So I will now take it off. But this is in honor of Liverpool's manager. So There we go.
So this brings me to what makes you an actuary in the wild. It's not just that you're a football fan in the UK, but you leverage your love of football with your actuarial background to develop TransferLab, which is a football analytics platform. Can you tell the viewers a little bit more about TransferLab?
Yeah. So that's been a really interesting story. I think going back to 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, pensions, the industry has moved on a lot over the last 30 years. We now have quite a big team of business analysts, IT people who can build really good systems. And we were looking at ways in which we could leverage our expertise in other areas of business. We've actually now built up quite big businesses in the areas of health analytics and energy analytics, and a lot of people in the UK are passionate about football, soccer.
Yeah.
So we thought, can we use those skills to develop something in football? And we knew we didn't actually know, passionate about football, but didn't know much about how the football industry worked. So we built up a partnership with a firm called Analytics FC, who are consultants in football, who know all about the football industry. They like technology and analytics, but they don't have the wherewithal to actually build big, complicated and maintain systems. So it's a sort of perfect match. We can bring the tech and the interest in football. They can bring the football knowledge and the interest in sort of analytics and tech. And so we've built, so our main product is this platform called TransferLab. We built it up over the last 5 years. It's a SaaS, software as a service. It's an online platform which football clubs and a few other organisations can take out a license to, and it gives them access to weekly updated information on over 100,000 football players around the world in around 100 men's leagues and 24 women's leagues. So we've expanded the platform to cover women's football in the last couple of years. And the way it works is we take a data feed from an external provider who codes up every game in these 125 leagues around the world. There's 1,500 events approximately per game. Every event is coded. So where did it happen on the pitch, the XY coordinates, who was involved, what happened, what was the outcome. And then so we get, I think it's about 1.3 million events on a feed every week. And then we put them through our proprietary Markov chain algorithm to say not just how many passes did this player make during the game, but actually how effective were those passes, or this defender, how many tackles did they make, not just how many, but how effective were those tackles. And then we can use that analytics output to sort of rank the players and then give that access through the platform to clubs to sort of select which sort of players, what profile of players they want, and that'll potentially give them short lists of players to consider and scout.
So you mentioned you're in the UK. You started this in the English Premier League, I believe, is when what you talked about. How successful have you been at expanding this globally?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. We started with West Ham United. They were our first client in the English Premier League. And it's been interesting because we now have clients, I think, in 10 different countries. We've got just over 30 football clubs as clients. We got our first client in Brazil. We got a couple of weeks ago, Santos, the club that Pele once played for. So that's been quite an exciting development. We've built a version of the platform now that's in the Spanish language. So it's been successful, but we could always do with more clients. So
yes,
any organization. So, but we're globally, it's lots of different countries.
Yeah, and for our viewers here in the United States, have you been able to penetrate the American market too?
We have, to only a limited extent. I think we've worked with 3 clubs. I think we've got a couple now as clients who are using TransferLab. Actually, our associates at Analytics FC also do quite a lot of interesting consulting work. So I think they're working with a couple of US clients in the MLS as well. But we're always interested in talking to new potential clubs as clients. So if anyone in the US knows a football club that's interested, then we'd love to talk to them.
Definitely. So you mentioned that that you use this for scouting players. Can you just talk a little bit about how you use it for scouting players, the TransferLab itself?
Yeah. So what we've built into it is quite a lot of sort of user functionality. So you can we provide sort of standard profiles of players in different positions, like attacking fullback, defensive fullback, whatever. And we sort of worked out broadly what sort of metrics might work for a club. But a club can then bespoke their own player profiles. So if you want a fullback who's got a particular skill set, you can define that. You can weight different skills, and that will give you a different ranking of players. So scouting people at clubs can sort of say, we're looking for this kind of player. We want these particular skill sets. You might say, we've actually got a player who's about to leave us. We want to replicate their skill set. So you can actually find which players on the platform are most similar to their particular skill set as well. So we're constantly building extra functionality. One of the interesting things, because we've got it all in-house at LCP, when we're talking to a club and they say it would be great if you put this new metric in that measures, I think one of the ones was diagonal balls by centre backs. So how effective is a centre back at doing a long pass down the wing? Then we actually built that metric in because the club asked us to. So it's quite an interesting process. Clubs say we want this, and often it's not. We can actually add that to the system quite quickly.
So in addition to scouting, what other types of analysis do you do?
So our platform and the metrics from it have been used in some really interesting developments over the last couple of years. We've supported quite a few players in negotiating their contracts with their clubs. So I think one of the most famous players in the world, Kevin De Bruyne, Manchester City in the Premier League, he negotiated his contract with the club a couple of years ago with support from Analytics FC using the metrics from TransferLab. And then I think more recently, at the end of last year, we did this for the first time with a woman football player, Alex Greenwood. She was one of the England Lionesses who won the Euro 2022 last year. She renegotiated her contract also with Manchester City, the women's team. And again, and we're actually quite sort of vocal in the development of women's football to be seen as on equal playing field as men's football. I guess in the US, women's football is historically has been almost a bigger game. Is that right?
Yeah, it's becoming quite popular here. Yes.
Whereas in Europe and England in particular, women's football has not had that level of profile or indeed professionalism as on the men's side. So, but it's moving up very quickly and developing, and it's important that women footballers have access to the same sort of tools and support as men. So we've been quite vocal in that area.
I see. So you developed something called a sustainability index. Can you tell us more about what it is and why you developed it, and then just a little bit about how it is changing football in England?
Yeah, that's a completely different area from TransferLab, and one that we've been working in more recently. So football is an amazingly interesting industry. It's like culturally probably the biggest sport in the world, one of the biggest cultural things in the world. And it attracts, therefore, a lot of money. But that money can cause problems. And certainly in the game in England, there have been issues with a lot of. I guess what happens is smaller clubs, because we have promotion relegation, which you don't have in the States. You can potentially buy a small club with the aim of getting it promoted and potentially get it into the English Premier League. And once you get into the English Premier League, there is a lot of money from the TV rights. So, and in fact, there's been a really fascinating example recently with the team Wrexham, which has been bought by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, and has been on the Disney Plus program. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen that one, but
it's a fascinating story. So they bought a club that had been quite a big team in Wales, second tier team, and then they've fallen on hard times. They got relegated, I think, to the fifth tier. And Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have bought the club. And it's a great story, actually, because I think their heart is in the right place and they're looking to take them back up the pyramid. But there have been quite a lot of cases where people have bought clubs with the idea of sort of gambling with them, in the sense that you put a bit of money in. If it goes up, it can be worth a lot more. If it doesn't, then you sort of get bored, walk away from it. And so I think about 40 clubs in England have gone into administration, and about 3 or 4 have actually gone out of existence in the last 20 years. So one of the issues in English football is, how do we make the game more sustainable financially and in a governance way? And so there was issue with something called the European Super League a couple of years ago, when a lot of the big clubs wanted to go off and form their own league, and so there's a whole new sort of force behind better governance and sustainability in football in England. And so we've been working with an organisation called Fair Game to support their campaign to develop a sustainability index. So this will be an index which measures every club. I think there's 102 clubs down the pyramid, into how good they are at their financial sustainability, but also at their governance, their fan engagement, their community engagement, and their equality. So looking at trying to promote good governance, good behaviour in football clubs, because they are such important parts of the community.
Okay.
And when a football club goes under, which they do from time to time, as I said, it can have a devastating effect on the local community. So we're saying, let's give some visibility to how all these clubs are doing. So we're working on visualizing, taking the data and putting it into a format that really makes sense and visibility, so that people can see which clubs are doing well, and then potentially reward the clubs that do well with more of the money that comes out of the TV rights.
I see.
That's the idea. But yeah, really interesting project that we're currently working on.
No, that sounds very interesting. You also mentioned when we talked that you took an MBA in football industries. Why did you decide to pursue that MBA, and how has it helped with TransferLab?
Yes, this was 3 years ago. Actually, it was in the middle of COVID. But I think I recognise I'm sort of the lead partner within our firm for the football analytics. So I recognise that, well, again, I'm passionate about football, and we've got these associates at Analytics FC who bring the real football knowledge.
Right.
It would be really useful to actually have a really good understanding of how football works as a business. So Liverpool University is the university I did it at, which happened to be also the university both my parents were lecturers at. So there's a sort of coming home aspect to it. And yeah, it was a really interesting course of learning about the financial side, the operational side. It's sort of everything except the playing side, but actually how football operates. Not just as a business, but as a sort of organisation, the sort of community side as well. And so, I mean, how has that helped with TransferLab? I don't think it's helped from a technical perspective. I think it's sort of there's been a lot of networking, lots of people on the course. For example, the people who are we've got a B2B marketing firm who are promoting transfer in Latin America, and they're people who I met through one of the contacts.
I see.
At the Liverpool Fimber course. So and it was just, although I was still working full time while I was doing it sort of mostly remotely, I still just really enjoyed doing it. Just being able to think about football, learn about football, talk about football. What's not to like? I guess it was hard work, but apart from that.
Yeah, I know it's when it's something that you're passionate about. It may be hard work, but it's something you really enjoy. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, I mean, what it's meant is actually I'm now sort of going to the next phase of my career. I'm beginning to hand over my, I've been working in pensions consulting, I say for nearly 40 years now, and I'm beginning to hand over my sort of clients on that side of my work, and so I can devote more of my time to developing the football business, which it's both exciting and a little bit daunting as well.
Yeah.
I'm an actuary who has lots of technical knowledge, and I'm now going to be doing something where my technical knowledge is relatively limited, and it's more about being entrepreneurial and developing contacts and talking to people and building stuff. But actually, my technical knowledge is fairly limited. So it's quite exciting, but a little bit daunting as well.
Well, this is all very interesting, and I'm not sure who all is going to be watching this. I know a lot of people are actuaries, but I think there's some others that have ventured out and watched this in addition to actuaries. So you never know who might be watching this, and it might be someone who is a football soccer fan. So where can our viewers find out more about you, especially someone who might be interested in purchasing TransferLab?
Yeah. So, I guess the obvious place to find me is on LinkedIn. I presume this will be going on LinkedIn as well. Right. So, I mean, LinkedIn, I post quite a lot on LinkedIn. I do a little bit on Twitter, but I find LinkedIn to be a very good way. There are a surprisingly large number of football. Am I being unfair? Surprisingly, a large number of football people are on LinkedIn and use it a lot. You tend to think it's a traditional business sort of platform, but actually it is widely used in football. So Bart Huby on LinkedIn. easy to find. So, and also my firm LCP. lcp.uk.com. That's our website, and there's a football analytics page on there. So
Okay.
yeah, there's quite a lot about TransferLab on that. And then Analytics FC, our partners as well. They've got some really interesting stuff on their website as well. So lots of places if you're interested in learning more about or listening to more about football analytics, the way data is used in football now. Yeah, lots of places to look.
Well, Bart, I appreciate you joining me, and I thank you for being a guest on Actuaries in the Wild.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. Great to have the opportunity to talk about football. I always enjoy doing that.
Yeah. If you're an actuary and know an actuary who's ventured out into the wild, contact me so we can share your story. You can find Actuaries in the Wild on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time on Actuaries in the Wild.